Well, one country that's expressed concern about the economic uncertainty in Europe is China. Its own growth is slowing, in part due to a drop in demand for its products from Europeans. But despite predictions that the Chinese economy will in the coming decades become the largest in the world, is the country also ready to take the lead in global affairs? A new book entitled Restless Empires argues maybe not. And today its author Arne Westad joins us to explain why. Arne, thank you very much for coming in. In the book you write, those who expect China to remain for a long time as it is today will be proven wrong. Why?
That builds to the first extent on China's past. You have to look at China's past to see that it is indeed a very restless empire. It's an uncertain country in terms of where it wants to move. It has a form of state which I think is not really given to survive for very long in the form that it has now. So all of those of us who think about China as being unchangeable are almost certain to be proven wrong.
Right, but in that vision of yours, do you see a China that is more expansionist than it is at the moment in terms of its foreign policy?
I think that's quite possible. I mean, China at the moment is very uncertain in terms of its foreign policy direction. It's not always true that with great power comes great responsibility in terms of being willing to take that on. I mean, the United States itself proved that during the interwar years, where it was the foremost power in the world, but not willing to take global leadership. And I think China is roughly there now. Where it would move later on is very, very difficult to say. But it's quite possible that it will be a China that will be more aggressive, less intent on international cooperation than the regime we have today.
Is that something the Chinese people would be interested in?
No, I don't think it would be to the best for the Chinese people. And I think that's what many Chinese are seeing today themselves. Of course, there is an increasing number of Chinese who are concerned about the position in the world of their country overall, sometimes criticizing the government for being too weak on international affairs. But the vast majority of Chinese know that their future and the future of their children are bound up to a China that engages with the international community, that emphasizes its economic growth over any kind of great power dreams.
I'm struck, traveling around America, by how many Americans are aware of the economic threat from China. We have a presidential election coming up. What does the next president need to know in order to keep China as friendly as possible to US interests?
First and foremost, that this is very much about integrating China into an international system that has been created first by Britain in the early part of the 20th century, and after that by the United States. And I think it's quite possible to get China to see that its own self-interest is to some extent bound up to that in a very positive fashion. But the way you do that, I think, is by trying to entice the Chinese leadership into international organizations, international agreements, that they would see as being in their own interest. And that starts with the cooperation between the United States and China within the East Asian region. That's where the focus of the new Chinese leadership will be in terms of foreign affairs.
And of course, that's what Washington is watching as well. Arne Westad, the book is Restless Empire. Thank you very much for coming in to talk about it. Of course, and China, a key issue on this presidential election campaign as well.